So by providing yourself with a tangible goal based on your performance, you can then reach towards consistently tracking your month-over-month performance on your way to reaching that goal. And that month-over-month performance is really something that's available to you within EQuIPP, and EQuIPP will kind of guide you and do the heavy lifting on the data side for you to be able to track that information.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Quality Solutions Quality Corner Show, where we believe that quality measurement leads to better outcomes. Let us become your go-to source for all things related to quality and medication use in healthcare. We will hit on trending health topics as they relate to performance measurements and find common ground for payers and practitioners. We will discuss how the EQuIPP platform can help you with your performance goals, and we will also make sure to keep you up to date on pharmacy quality news. So buckle up and put your thinking cap on. The Quality Corner Show starts now.
Hello, Quality Corner Show listeners. This is your host, Nick Dorich, and we welcome you to the PQS Quality Corner Show. A little more than a year ago, we had our very own PQS team member, Cora Eilders, on the show to talk about EQuIPP calendar year performance. Well, it has been a few weeks since the 2020 calendar year data was released in EQuIPP for 2020, and we thought it would be good to have Cora back on the show to talk about what pharmacies can now do with this data. As a reference, we encourage you, our audience, to check out Season 1, Episode 19, which is titled Finding Your Baseline to Improve Patient Care. We might recap a bit from that episode and hopefully provide some new insights for you and your pharmacy team members. Cora, with that, welcome back to the show. Last year in February was the first time you were on the podcast, and we were trying to make sure that you were comfortable doing your first podcast recording. You knocked it out of the park, and now a year later, you've done several other podcasts. You've been on multiple times, but we're happy to have you on for your first time in 2021.
Yeah, excited to be here. 2021 thus far is kind of treating me well. Really excited to, have gone through 2020. A lot has changed since really that episode in particular, world-wise, but excited to be back here and really pushing forward through 2021.
That's great to hear. And Cora, for our new listeners who might not have heard you yet, can you provide us a quick background on your role at PQS?
Yeah, and really a little bit has changed since the last time I was on the podcast. So I'm currently the Senior Manager of Payer Relations here at PQS. So I work with health plans and PBMs to launch and maintain their performance information within the EQuIPP product. And then in turn, I work with you, Nick, the pharmacy teams and pharmacies all together to just engage all of the stakeholders in their efforts around quality improvement and really taking action on the performance measurement within EQuIPP.
Thanks for that introduction, Cora. I'm really excited to talk about this because I may spoil the lead here, but we did see a lot of performance improvement in 2020. So it's how do pharmacies continue to build upon that information? That's really going to be the key aspect that we focus on. Now, before we do jump into the content of today's show, I'm going to provide a quick overview of what comes next. Cora, you and I have 3 questions written down related to EQuIPP performance and improvement strategies. I'll go down the list and ask the first question. Cora, you're then going to provide a response, and we may have some back and forth to summarize the key points. We're going to repeat that process for the second and third questions, and of course, we're going to end with a bit of fun follow-up questions at the end of the show. Now that we've described the process, let's go ahead and jump into question 1. And Cora, for our first question, let's try our best that we can do. Let's try to be as best as possible to give a quick recap on the episode, Finding Your Baseline to Improve Patient Care, which, as I mentioned, we aired it about this time last year. What are some of the main takeaways that pharmacists need to know in reviewing performance data for the calendar year? And of course, that means in this case, when they're looking at their calendar year 2020 data.
Yeah, so my main takeaway really when looking back at that episode is to always keep the long-term game in mind when it comes to performance improvement, and especially when you're looking at year-over-year type of improvement. So while there's things that we can do daily to improve and kind of take action on the data, it is going to take some time to steer the metaphorical ship of the overall pharmacy towards consistent performance improvement. In that podcast, we talked about kind of team engagement and really using the data But by reviewing your year-end 2020 data, what you're able to fully understand is your baseline. And from that, you can kind of decipher maybe what worked during the year and even what didn't work. So 2020 may have been a pivotal year for some pharmacies, especially with the pandemic happening. And really that may have urged along some further efforts to supplying patients with enhanced services such as delivery, doing more extended day fills, perhaps some more MedSync and things like that. So through your historical review of that 2020 calendar year data, you may be able to see some trends that start to emerge in the March or April timeframe of last year, when America was really kind of hit with the beginning of the pandemic. So overall, the intent of the in-depth review of your calendar year performance data for 2020 is to set a baseline to move forward in 2021 with. So kind of gave the point of, 2020 performance really seeing a little bit of an uptick because of a lot of those great things that pharmacies were able to do. So now it's a good time to solidify your understanding of your new baseline performance, and that allows you to really jump into goal setting. So by providing yourself with a tangible goal based on your performance, you can then reach towards consistently tracking your month-over-month performance on your way to reaching that goal. And that month-over-month performance is really something that's available to you within EQuIPP, and EQuIPP will kind of guide you and do the heavy lifting on the data side for you to be able to track that information.
Thank you, Cora. A few weeks ago, we had on Amanda, and we were talking about documentation with the outliers in EQuIPP. And I want to relate this question here as a follow-up for you. With Amanda, we talked about how documentation, it does not change performance scores. But as you were just describing, pharmacists need to know and understand the services that they're providing and how that relates to quality improvement. So is that really the focus on where that documentation can be used appropriately so they can assess whether or not those services were truly successful or not? I know, just because you do an activity doesn't mean you're improving scores. I think back to when I was a child, and maybe you can relate to this part. If my mom told me to clean my room, I would often go and quote unquote clean my room. Whether or not it was up to her standard, that was up for debate. But this is where the documentation and EQuIPP kind of serves in that same practice, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think back to all of those enhanced type offerings that pharmacies started to, or not even started, really have been doing, but maybe picked up more during the COVID pandemic, it's especially important to relate that back to the data that you're seeing in EQuIPP. So if you are working with a patient who may have historically been non-adherent or may have been kind of struggling to fill that statin if they're diabetic, having that documentation on the interactions that you're having is key. We all know pharmacies are busy. We all know that you guys have a lot on your plate. And so within the outliers functionality of EQuIPP, you're able to see, all of those patients that may need a little bit of extra help, but it's able to track for you those interactions that you had. So maybe you're working with a patient to do some MedSync type of items. You're able to document that within the EQuIPP dashboard. It changes an outlier status. So it'll go from not started to being completed. And so then you've taken action on that patient. And then as you track your performance month over month toward reaching your goal, you're able to see, okay, yes, I completed this interaction. Maybe a couple months have passed since that interaction, and the patient's still an outlier. Perhaps they're getting better, or perhaps they're staying the same, but that's an indicator to you that maybe some follow-up would be necessary there. So overall, absolutely, documentation is going to be key as you work towards that continuous improvement strategy. And I do want to just put another caveat in here. I mean, we're talking about the whole overall EQuIPP dashboard, but when we look at the marketplace as a whole and a lot of the new things that are being offered, and those specifically come in the means of potential new A1C measures and some exciting things that are happening there. There's been some focus on some blood pressure type measures to be able to track blood pressure in patients that you serve. And so when we talk about those types of new initiatives, documentation is going to be pivotal in those. And that's definitely another one of those steps if we're thinking about overall, provider status and moving the profession of pharmacy forward.
Yeah, Cora, that's a great point. And I'll reiterate it. just because documentation doesn't change scores doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. The documentation is going to be important. It has a purpose here and now, but going forward with other programs, pharmacist documentation is going to matter even more. Now, Cora, let's pivot and talk a little bit more about how pharmacies use EQuIPP. And our experience at PQS is that most pharmacies, when they log into EQuIPP, the first thing that they go and do is navigate directly to that outlier button, and they start reviewing the patient information. But interestingly enough, that's not the first step that we hear as a best practice from the high performing pharmacies. So the high performers with EQuIPP and the pharmacies that are really getting the most benefit, they take some different action steps, and they do check the outliers, of course, but that's maybe a secondary or maybe even a tertiary step to what they're doing to prioritize their use with EQuIPP. Now, where they do start, Cora, and what I want to explore with us now is that analyze performance button. Where do they find it, and why is it that the high performers with EQuIPP information, why do they prioritize that detail?
Yeah, so it's so important to understand that there's a ton of useful information with EQuIPP that's not solely focused on the outliers. And I just want to point out, if you are super short on time, or perhaps you've already reviewed your scores for the month, it's absolutely okay to just hop into the outliers and go in towards those action steps. But at least with the once a month updates of EQuIPP, you should be taking a step back and understanding where you stand on your trek towards your goals here for 2021. And that whole roadmap of your goals, you're going to find all of that information within this Analyze Performance button. So if you're first logging in and you're seeing your performance dashboard, maybe you like to view the 6-month rolling period. In this case, we've been talking a lot about the year-to-date period. Whether any period you're looking at, you will find that Analyze Performance button under your performance score for any measure. And so when you click on that, you're going to be provided with this great amount of information. And so what that does is that information will break down your performance score by each health plan and really by each line of business. And so perhaps your Medicare population did extremely well in 2020 in their adherence measures, but it could be a scenario where this will highlight that the commercial population or maybe some Medicaid population that you serve wavered a little bit in 2020. So this Analyze Performance button is the only place to find that. But then additionally, the other key piece of data, all of that lies within the Quality Improvement Programs table. And so this Quality Improvement Programs table really is going to allow you to track your performance in any of the health plan or PBM programs that you participate in or that you have members who participate in. And so this becomes extremely key. We all know that as a pharmacist, your main objective is, taking great care of your patients. And this table will provide you with your performance scores by health plan program, but we'd all be a little bit remiss if we didn't mention that table and really those line items really can link back to any value-based or quality-based contracts that you have with these health plans or PBMs. So as part of your goal setting for 2021, it's great to have an overall goal per measure to achieve a certain rate, but you may also have goals that in certain programs you want to reach a threshold or a percentile that maps back to your contract. So this is the way to track your performance in each of those specific programs. And then you'll be able to kind of use that information to guide then your interactions with those members. So if you have a certain program and you see you need to do a little bit of work there, you're able to then navigate back to your outliers page, find those outliers, and take swift action on those people.
Cora, I was having a conversation with a pharmacist about EQuIPP and just how to maximize it for their pharmacy staff the other day. And they brought up a key point. I'll reiterate it here. For the pharmacy team, first going into the EQuIPP dashboard, it's going to take a little bit of time to navigate and figure out where you really need to prioritize. And you mentioned it, many of those pharmacies, as they get more used to it, they may be able to spend a very quick amount of time checking analyze performance and those program details and then focusing to outliers. But where they're then spending most of the time is actually doing the patient follow-up. So as pharmacists and as pharmacy staff become more comfortable with the data, that time spent in the dashboard really should start to reduce, because you know your action plan, you're going in with an action plan. It's really the same kind of experience as if I'm going to a grocery store, right? If I'm going to a grocery store that's not my normal, I'm going to spend time meandering down different aisles trying to find the cheese or the bread. But once you've been there enough times, you know where to go and you can really prioritize what you do so you're most efficient with your time spent. So really becoming familiar with the dashboard, it allows pharmacy staff members to be more efficient with how they use it. Now, Cora, we're going to again pivot here and we're going to talk a little bit more about 2020. And obviously, it was a bit different for all of us here in the US and, of course, all over the world. Due to COVID-19, many pharmacists were quick to keep patient adherence in check by utilizing extended day supply for medications, emergency authorizations, or early refills. They may have been doing more implementation of medication synchronization or MedSync. We certainly have seen and heard about more drive-through, curbside pickup, even delivery for patients. Now, all of those items should go to improve medication adherence, but like a lot of things in 2020, not everything went as expected. So in general, what we did see for performance scores in 2020 is that they did tend to be higher than the 2019 calendar year. That's not the case for all pharmacies. But do we expect that to continue for the 2021 calendar year? Would like to have you look a little bit into the crystal ball and share a little bit of thoughts on, what helped improvement, what pharmacists need to be considerate of so that we can make 2021 as successful of a year as possible.
Yeah, and while I don't have a crystal ball, I can absolutely give you kind of my thoughts on this. And first, I want to say just a huge thank you to any and all pharmacies, or pharmacists, pharmacy techs, pharmacy staff members out there working through this 2020 year. I mean, it's been incredible to see the amount of agility and just adjustments that have been made on the fly to really prioritize patient care and kind of keeping things moving for everyone through all of that uncertainty. So that has been incredible to see. And it's really just manifested itself in some really great performance scores as well. And so obviously everybody wants to kind of keep that on track and keep that moving in the right direction. But I think we do have to take a step back and look at what truly did change in 2020, and then how we can continue to keep that on the right track. So a couple of the big things that changed were, one, being patient behavior. And so you saw patients not spending as much time kind of out and about, and maybe a little bit more targeted interactions with the pharmacies. So whether that be curbside pickup or even just utilizing the delivery services. So that can inherently work in your favor in those adherence metrics, and even sometimes in some non-adherence based quality metrics. These pharmacy services, we know we can kind of draw a straight line between those services really helping improve in performance scores, especially when you look at kind of MedSync and obviously like automated refills and items like that. And then the third thing that kind of changed this year is CMS reporting requirements. So we know that obviously wouldn't have a direct impact on the performance scores that we're seeing in the marketplace today. But as things kind of happened through 2020, health plans really take their guidance from CMS, and things kind of loosened up a little bit. And so the marketplace itself maybe had a little bit of fresh air when it comes to the quality side, and really tried to give pharmacies the ability to take action in any way that they deemed fit to serve their members the best. And what we saw through that kind of breath of fresh air is really incredible things happen. And so what I just want people to be cognizant of is, we see vaccinations happening at really great rates, and really we're hoping that this world can go back to a little bit of what is seemingly normal, potentially summertime or even later than that. But what we don't want to do is let that reverting to normal behavior cause any sort of drop in performance scores. And so my challenge for you all with doing all of the great things that you're doing in the pharmacies today is just to not let that happen. Be cognizant of your scores and the trends that you're seeing in the data month over month, and just keep up with all of the great things that have been done in 2020. And so overall, as you mentioned, the marketplace has seen great improvements, and we only want to keep that kind of on the upward trend here in 2021 and even into 2022.
Great information, Cora. Now, I said at the top that we were going to have 3 questions for us to explore, and I'm going to add in a 4th here, technically. And this is all really great information, and it's going to help inform pharmacists and pharmacy team members about how to effectively use this performance information. I know from experience, pharmacists, we are inquisitive by nature. We ask a lot of questions. We like to know how things work. So as someone who you're working directly with payers with your role now at PQS, but in a past role at PQS, you were working directly with and coaching pharmacies on how to use EQuIPP efficiently, most efficiently, and get the most of the information. So where would you recommend that a pharmacist or their team members go to find out more about EQuIPP? There's a lot of tools in the dashboard. There's an item for support. What do you recommend, Cora, as far as the best way for our pharmacists and their staff to learn about EQuIPP?
Yeah, so there's a ton of great information out there. I am a big fan of the videos that exist. We have a link within the support functionality or even in the FAQ functionality within the EQuIPP dashboard that will take you to a whole suite of videos. And so if you are particularly interested in understanding how the PDC measures work, there's a video for that. If you're looking how to navigate within the dashboard, there's a video for that. So there's a ton of really targeted videos to answer any and all questions that you may have there. Additionally, we have a really great support team. So if you have a specific question on data that you're seeing within your dashboard, or perhaps how that relates back to a certain payer or performance program, feel free to send those questions through our support staff. They're able to reach out and ask any additional questions if they're not able to help you right away. So we're always happy to kind of field those and try and best help the pharmacies really excel in these programs. So with that, I talked about videos, support tickets. This podcast is also a great resource. We're also doing some great items with webinars coming up here in the near future. So keep your eyes and ears open for those. But we try our best to put as much information out there as we can. If you have any suggestions on things that you want to know that perhaps we can make into a video or make into a podcast, always happy to hear those suggestions as well. So please send them our way via the support functionality in EQuIPP.
Thank you very much for that, Cora. I appreciate your final notes on how people can really learn efficiently about EQuIPP. Now, Cora, I do once again thank you for coming on the show and really shining a light on EQuIPP and providing more knowledge for everybody that is listening in. We love having you on the show because of your dedication to helping pharmacists and pharmacy technicians and any and all other pharmacy staff members understand performance scores and helping them find ways to improve. And we all know that leading that discussion is going to ultimately improve patient care, which is the ultimate goal. We are now at the point of the show where we get to close with a fun question. And Cora, you and I, we both grew up as Chicago Bulls fans. And I know that in 2020, we spent a good amount of time watching and discussing the Last Dance documentary that was on ESPN. You can now watch it on Netflix. There's a lot of information that went into Michael Jordan, his tenure with the Chicago Bulls, his last season with the Chicago Bulls. There's a lot of information about leadership, teamwork, et cetera, that can be gleaned from that series. I'm really interested. What was your biggest takeaway? And is there anything that you learned from that series that you are applying in your everyday work, your time at home, time with friends, et cetera? So I'll let you take it from here, but would love to hear how you are taking some of the practices from The Last Dance and applying it into your real life experience.
Yeah, so my first takeaway, and this is a personal takeaway, and I know you spilled the beans that I'm a Chicago Bulls fan. So first takeaway is Michael Jordan, hands down, one of the greatest athletes ever. So just had to mention that. But then to move into like my larger takeaway from The Last Dance is just this incredible amount of determination and just cognitive focus that Michael Jordan had and brought to the table. And it becomes apparent when you see some of his early years in the league and then transitioning to then kind of having teammates who are also striving for success behind them, and then how they were able to collectively build that into one of the greatest dynasties of sports history. And so I think the key to making that happen, obviously, was the determination, but also truly Michael Jordan's ability to kind of lead from within. He wasn't outright kind of out there like saying, I'm the best, I'm the only one that can do these things. He really kind of just led by example, put in that hard work. It made those around him want to also put in that hard work and be successful right there alongside with him. And so I think taking that back into, your personal life and even just working with even colleagues or just friendships, it becomes very apparent. You kind of get out what you put in many relationships. And so especially during times of COVID, where it's a little bit harder to connect with people, it's always important to kind of do that little bit of hard work and reach out to people or connect with them on deeper levels and kind of lead from within, whether it's within your family, your friend group, or even at work. So that was my biggest takeaway, that, nothing comes easy. Do the hard work and just kind of rally those around you.
I'll use a bit of a metaphor here, Cora, to dogpile on those comments, if you will. It's easy for us to remember and think of Michael Jordan at the peak of his career and the second three-peat. He had all the tools. He was the veteran who had kind of, done it all. And a lot of his best work in that sense was the leadership and how he kind of moved the members of his team, kind of like chess pieces, to put them in the best position. But if you look over the course of his career, he came into the NBA as a strong defender, guy that would drive to the hoop. He had to add in a fadeaway jumper. When he kept getting beat up by the Detroit Pistons, he put on 25 pounds of muscle so that he could go toe-to-toe with them. Later in his career, he added in the three-point shot as he was starting to lose some of that speed and other things. So where this applies to pharmacy, right? Jordan was always great, but he had to keep adding tools to stay at the top of the game. Pharmacy, same exact way. So when we talked about optimizing medication synchronization, doing delivery, all the other things that are there with the other enhanced patient care services, if your pharmacy wants to be like Michael Jordan there, you have to constantly be adding those new services and perfecting those items. And like Jordan, you need to make sure that you're training your team on how to effectively use all of those items. So that's my final Jordan-related notes for today, but I'm sure I'll have more to share afterwards. Now, with that, Cora, really appreciate having you on the show today. And if anyone has a question for you about what you had discussed, where can they contact you for more information?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me there if you just search me by my name, or if you want to reach out about really questions on the content that we covered today, reach out via those support tickets, and I can absolutely chime in on those as well. Also, we are on the PQS website, so if you have kind of questions, or I believe our emails are on there as well, you can reach out via that mechanism as well.
Thank you very much, Cora. Appreciate having you on the show once again. We'll let you get back to your normal work. And for our listeners, want to have you continue to tune in for our next couple of shows in this series here. March 2021, we're really looking to celebrate and acknowledge the great things that pharmacists and pharmacy staff members have been doing. We've talked about COVID. We've talked about pharmacist appreciation. We're going to talk about a couple of other, service opportunities that are there. And once we get into April, we're going to again pivot back. Michael Jordan, even his greatness, would always pivot to the right thing at the right time. And we're gonna keep in that in our mindset. In April, we're going to pivot back to a clinical topic. But for now, we hope that you're enjoying our series on pharmacist provided services and ways to improve patient care. Now, if you have a question or topic that you would like for us to cover in the future, please let us know. You can email us at info@pharmacyquality.com. Similarly, you can DM us directly on Twitter, and our handle there is @pharmacyquality. With that, I again appreciate you listening to the Quality Corner show, and there is one final message from the PQS team.
The Pharmacy Quality Solutions Quality Corner Show has a request for you. Our goal is to spread the word about how quality measurement can help improve health outcomes, and we need your help in sharing this podcast to friends and colleagues in the healthcare industry. We also want you to provide feedback, ask us questions, and suggest health topics you'd like to see covered. If you are a health expert and you want to contribute to the show or even talk on the show, please contact us. You can email info@pharmacyquality.com. Let us know what is on your mind, what we can address, so that you are fully informed. We want you to be able to provide the best care for your patients and members, and we wish all of you listeners out there well.